The Grand Azure Hotel, a skeletal monument against the churning Atlantic, clawed at the cliff edge. Its faded grandeur whispered a forgotten elegance, a stark contrast to the chilling tales spun by locals. They spoke of spectral whispers, lights that danced with phantom hands, and an omnipresent dread that clung to the hotel like sea mist. Tragic deaths and buried sins stained its history, fueling whispers of a malevolent entity trapped within its decaying walls. For decades, the Azure had stood vacant, a tomb sealed against the living, its secrets festering in the damp silence. But for the seekers, a band of paranormal investigators led by the enigmatic Professor Eleanor Vance, the hotel was a siren's call, an irresistible puzzle wrapped in layers of fear. The team, a motley crew of specialists, included Marcus, the tech wizard, his backpack overflowing with ghost-hunting gadgets, Isabel, the sensitive, her senses attuned to the ethereal plane, David, the historian, driven by the hotel's shadowed past, and Emily, the scientist, her mind a fortress of logic seeking rational explanations for the uncanny. They arrived on a night ripped apart by a storm, the winds howl a mournful dirge, the rain a relentless assault. The hotel loomed before them, a monstrous silhouette against the tempestuous sea. Even Emily, the bastion of skepticism, felt a prickle of unease. Professor Vance, her eyes alight with an almost manic gleam, declared, "Tonight, we penetrate the heart of the Azure's mysteries. We will exhume its secrets, and we will confront whatever lurks within." Marcus, ever the pragmatist, busied himself setting up his equipment, a symphony of EMF readers, thermal imagers, and audio recorders. Isabel, her senses on high alert, felt a wave of icy air wash over her as she crossed the threshold, a sensation like walking through a graveyard. David, notebook in hand, began his exploration of the dust-choked corridors, hunting for echoes of the past. Emily, her scientific mind clicking, scrutinized the hotel's architecture, searching for mundane explanations for the alleged hauntings. As they ventured deeper, the atmosphere thickened, the silence amplifying, a suffocating blanket. The air hummed with sorrow, loss, and the residue of unfinished lives. Isabel's skin crawled, the unsettling feeling of being watched a constant companion. They reached the grand ballroom, its once brilliant chandeliers now shrouded in cobwebs, its dance floor a graveyard of forgotten elegance. The room pulsed with a tangible sorrow. Isabel gasped, her eyes wide with a dawning horror. "I feel it," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "A presence, a profound sadness." Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting the ballroom into a murky twilight. A frigid gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles Marcus had lit, leaving them enveloped in an almost palpable darkness. A collective gasp echoed through the stillness. "Did you see that?" Emily's voice trembled slightly. "See what?" David's eyes darted around the room, searching the shadows. "A figure," Emily stammered. "A shadow, gliding across the dance floor." Marcus's EMF reader shrieked, the needle spinning wildly. "The readings are off the charts," he choked out. "Something is definitely here." Isabel's eyes were closed, her senses straining. "It's a woman," she murmured. She's weeping." A moment later they heard it. A faint sob, drifting through the ballroom, a sound laced with unbearable grief. The sound chilled them to the bone. "It's her," Isabel whispered, her voice filled with a chilling certainty. "The woman, she's still here." David, his fingers flying across his notebook, consulted his research. "Local legend speaks of a young woman, Eliza, who met a tragic end in this hotel," he said, his voice hushed. "Heartbroken, her spirit is said to be forever bound to these walls." Professor Vance nodded, her expression grim. "Eliza's tale is well documented," she confirmed. "But there are other stories, darker whispers, of a more sinister presence within the Azure." Their investigation continued, each step further into the hotel's heart unearthing more unsettling phenomena. Doors slammed shut with unseen force, whispers slithered through empty hallways, and objects shifted without human intervention. Isabel's unease intensified, the feeling of being hunted growing stronger. They reached the hotel's oldest wing, a section sealed off for decades, its air thick with the scent of decay and forgotten sins. Here, the coldness was absolute, the shadows deeper, the feeling of being watched almost suffocating. In a hidden chamber concealed behind a crumbling wall, they unearthed a collection of faded photographs, brittle letters, and a leather-bound diary. As David began to decipher the diary's cryptic entries, a horrifying truth began to emerge. The diary belonged to Silas Blackwood, a former owner of the Grand Azure. His words painted a portrait of a man consumed by darkness, a history of cruelty and depravity, of unspeakable acts performed within the hotel's walls. Blackwood, obsessed with the occult, had conducted vile rituals, seeking to unlock forbidden powers. He was trying to open a gateway, David said, his voice laced with dread. A gateway to something evil. Professor Vance's expression was grave. Blackwood's actions have poisoned this hotel, she said. His malevolent legacy has drawn something unholy. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted, an Arctic blast sweeping through the chamber. The lights convulsed, then died, plunging them into an impenetrable darkness. What was that? Emily cried, her voice trembling with fear. Something is here, Isabel whispered, her senses overwhelmed by a wave of pure terror. A guttural growl echoed through the darkness, a sound that froze their blood. It grew louder, closer, as if some unseen predator was stalking them. We have to get out of here. Marcus's voice was strained. They stumbled through the darkness, their flashlights useless against the oppressive black. The growling pursued them, a terrifying symphony of menace. They could feel its presence, a dark, suffocating force. They burst into the grand ballroom, hoping for sanctuary, but there, in the center of the room, bathed in an eerie, otherworldly glow, stood a figure. Tall, gaunt, with burning red eyes and razor-sharp claws. Silas Blackwood. He unleashed a deafening roar, a sound that ripped through the hotel, a promise of agonizing death. The seekers were trapped. Blackwood lunged, his claws extended, his eyes blazing with hatred. Isabel screamed, her voice echoing through the hotel's silent corridors. The seekers scattered, desperate to escape his grasp. One by one, they fell victim to his supernatural fury. Emily, her scientific logic no match for the supernatural horror, was the first to succumb, her screams abruptly silenced. Marcus, his gadgets rendered useless, followed, his cries of terror echoing through the ballroom. David, his knowledge of the hotel's history offering no protection, met his gruesome end. Isabel, her senses screaming, felt Blackwood's presence closing in. She braced herself for the inevitable, her eyes squeezed shut. But then, she heard a voice, soft and ethereal. Eliza. Leave them, Eliza's voice whispered. They mean no harm. Blackwood hesitated, his red eyes flickering. He turned towards Eliza's spectral form, which had materialized beside Isabel. A silent battle raged between the two spirits, a clash of wills, a struggle for dominance. Finally, Blackwood yielded. He roared in frustration and vanished, his presence dissolving into the shadows. Eliza turned to Isabel, her eyes filled with a heartbreaking sadness. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for listening. Isabel nodded, tears streaming down her face. We will tell your story, she promised. We will reveal the truth about what happened here. Eliza offered a melancholic smile and then faded away, her presence dissolving into the darkness. Professor Vance, the sole survivor, emerged from the shadows, her face pale but resolute. She had witnessed the carnage, the unleashed evil. She knew she carried a burden, the weight of their sacrifice, the horrific truth of the Grand Azure's secrets. She gathered her remaining equipment, her heart heavy with grief. The storm had passed, and the first rays of dawn painted the sky with hues of gray and pink. The Grand Azure stood behind her, a silent sentinel, a tomb of shattered lives and buried sins. Professor Vance returned to the world, her story met with a wall of skepticism. People dismissed her claims as the delusions of a traumatized mind, the product of an overactive imagination. But Professor Vance knew the truth. She had stared into the abyss, she had faced the malevolent spirit of Silas Blackwood. She dedicated her life to the study of the paranormal, Becoming a renowned expert, her work both lauded and ridiculed. She never wavered in her belief in the supernatural, and the existence of forces beyond human understanding. The Grand Azure remained closed, its doors sealed, its secrets locked within its decaying walls. But its reputation as a haunted place endured, whispered in hushed tones, attracting thrill-seekers and paranormal investigators from the far corners of the world. Many dared to trespass, hoping to capture a glimpse of the supernatural, but few ever returned, their fates swallowed by the hotel's insatiable hunger. Some claimed to have seen Eliza's ghostly figure, forever searching for peace within the hotel's labyrinthine corridors. Others spoke of hearing Blackwood's chilling growl, still guarding his dark domain. And some simply vanished, swallowed by the hotel's malevolent presence, their fates unknown, adding to the ever-growing legend of the Grand Azure. Years turned into decades. Professor Vance, her hair now silver, her body frail, returned to the Grand Azure one last time. She stood on the precipice, overlooking the hotel, her heart a tapestry of sorrow and unwavering resolve. She knew the hotel would forever be a monument to human darkness, a testament to the evil that lurked in the hearts of men. But she also understood that the tales of the Grand Azure, its ghostly inhabitants, served as a grim warning, a stark reminder of the dangers that lay hidden in the shadows, the devastating power of unchecked obsession. She closed her eyes, listening to the relentless rhythm of the waves crashing against the cliffs below. She could almost hear the spectral whispers, the mournful cries of lost souls, the chilling growl of Silas Blackwood echoing through the empty halls. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the imposing structure. "Your secrets remain buried," she whispered, her voice carried away by the wind. "But your story will continue to be told." And with those words, Professor Eleanor Vance, the last witness to the horrors of the Grand Azure, turned and walked away, leaving the hotel to its secrets, its ghosts, and its enduring darkness. The Grand Azure remained, a silent sentinel against the unforgiving sea, a chilling reminder of the secrets that fester beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed. The legend of the haunted hotel lived on, a terrifying tale whispered on the wind, a warning to those who dare to seek the truth, a testament to the enduring power of fear. Please guys, visit our channel for more motivation videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like and share the video. Thanks for watching.